Today we're bringing together all of our final thoughts and reviews for the spring 2025 anime season. 2 shows are rolling over, having started in spring but ending in summer, so we'll be giving final reviews for Witch Watch and Sword of the Demon Hunter when they finish airing. So here's what we thought of the shows that we did watch this season. Today we're reviewing Moonrise. I was surprised to wake up on Thursday and find out that Netflix had released all 18 episodes of Moonrise in one batch, so we decided to jump on this one early even though we haven't finished watching the winter season yet. And I'm sorry, but I struggle to take seriously a big bad villain named Bob. It made me giggle every time that the characters would yell his name in anger.
Bob!
Bob Skylum! And you're just like, what? And then Jack's butler was named Harry Cox, which we had a good laugh about. The story itself was serviceable. First it was about a civil war, then it was about mutant jellyfish, and then it was about AI being bad.
It was very much a story of pulling back layers to see what was causing the problems of the world.
But it jumps around in the timeline a lot, and I wish it would have just told us a more linear story. There were many moments where it feels like you might have accidentally skipped an episode, or it just jumps awkwardly between the past and the present.
Well, the story wasn't terribly deep, it always had a new thing to present, and it was interesting to follow where it took our characters.
They also didn't definitively tell us what Moonchains was actually planning to do with the L-Zone at the end, but at some point Jack said, "I'm sorry we couldn't make the moon green," and then I'm just like, what does that mean? Were they planning to use it to make vegetation or something? Like, it was never explicitly said, and that really bothered me.
I did feel like we skipped kind of an important year there.
Yeah. I also wish the characters had been more fleshed out and that they'd exhibited more and deeper emotional responses. They tried, but it felt like most efforts related to the characters could have benefited from more time in the oven.
I feel like all the characters had something interesting, but none of them really felt like a fully complete package. Like, it was fun when Zoan, the hacker girl, finally got what she was looking for, and her ears would perk up, or Jack was always fighting to save his friends, but it also felt like he was just along for the ride without much to do in the downtimes.
I mean, he had knockoff Pokemon Go, so there was something to do.
Fair.
Salamandra was the best character in my opinion. She was a total badass, and every fight she was in was great. Just a beautiful, tough-as-nails woman who can casually beat up a whole SWAT team in one moment and then try to have girl talk with Reese in another moment. And I feel like every scene that she was in was improved by her presence.
This show had fun action that flowed really well, and man, I really want one of their capes to zip around with. It looks like a lot of fun. Also, it's kind of nice to just have a standalone story for once that ends on the end episode.
Yes. I mean, they do leave you with a smidgen of a cliffhanger at the very end, but it's not a cliffhanger that you're like, oh, there's going to be a season 2. It's like, oh, you as the viewer can just imagine what it means. The action was definitely a highlight, though, although I've seen a lot of people just attributing that to it being the strength of WIT Studios as a whole and not necessarily the show, but I won't take it one way or another. I just think it was cool. Overall, I think the story needed a little bit more time spent developing the characters, but I think that it had quite a few things going for it, and maybe people that like a little bit more ambiguity in their stories would like it better than I did. This was a 7 out of 10. The overall atmosphere for Can a Boy-Girl Friendship Survive is loud and energetic. It also exemplifies the immaturity side of coming-of-age stories.
This felt more like enemies to lovers than best friends to lovers like it should have been. Like, I understand some of the teasing amongst friends, but this is a lot, making Himari basically an irredeemable character to me.
She was kind of a jerk. But used preserved flower jewelry is so pretty, and I'm always happy to see more shows letting guys express their hobbies outside of sports. Like, you can still do sports, but this is cool. It was also really cool that it was a core element of the story and it continued through the whole thing and made waves across the storytelling itself.
But Yu's internal monologues were rather jarring. When they would go from talking to each other, then she would just make a face, and it would pause while he narrates what he thinks that face means.
Himari is like one of those signs that says stop and go at the same time. She's basically playing mind games with him because she can't be true to herself about her feelings, and he's getting really frustrated over the mixed signals. So by the time that she confesses for real, he doesn't even believe her. Even their first kiss was a Himari tantrum. I think we're supposed to feel sorry for her, but it's just impossible. She created this environment where Yu thinks that she's always teasing him and she doesn't speak up about the things that bother her. So she has a mental breakdown by episode 3 because of it and treats him pretty badly during their fight. As someone who successfully confessed their way out of the friend zone, I can't understand why Himari is putting herself in this position. At least her brother is there as a mature voice of reason and helping her through all of this. Their older siblings were a solid support system to balance the chaos. The best girl is definitely Enomoto. She's honest about her feelings and goes after what she wants. but I thought she was going to be a bigger character. Like, I knew based on the premise that she wasn't going to win, but she didn't have as much of a presence as I was expecting.
Yeah, once it was clear that she wasn't going to be much more than a side character after 3 episodes with the will you love her instead of Himari story arc, I felt very done with the show. Especially with Enomoto just not being in the last half of the show as much.
In the end, Yu and Himari finally confessed their feelings, so at least there's that for some viewer satisfaction. But I felt frustrated, and you fell asleep during the final arc.
There was no reason to go on after Enomoto got sidelined so hard because it ruined the love triangle tension.
So from a completely personal bias opinion, this was a 6 out of 10, but I could see some people having more empathy for Himari and enjoying it more. The Too Perfect Saint, tossed aside by my fiancé and sold to another kingdom, may be a hassle to say, but it was an enjoyable show to watch. Philia has been emotionally abused by her parents and fiancé all of her life, and so she doesn't understand what love is or how special she truly is. But the one bright light in her life is her sister. After Philia gets sent to Parnacotta, we as the audience get to see the story progress through both sisters' viewpoints, with Mia still in Girtonia. I hate words. Names! We witnessed both girls come out of their shells, find inner strength and loving, supportive relationships, and reunite to defeat the demon world.
I actually really liked this about the show. Getting to see the consequences of kicking her out of the country is not something a lot of shows that banish someone from a party ever reflect on, let alone get to see the whole events pan out from the other perspective.
Philia was very cute and extremely capable, so you're rooting for her the whole time. And Mia is very proactive in trying to make things better after she finds out what everyone did to her sister. These aspects made the abuse a little less depressing. I adored the outfits from this show too. Not just the girls' dresses, but even the guys looked pretty dapper. I appreciated the detail that went into this part of the character designs. Sadly, the second half felt a little bit rushed.
And I wish the show had expanded more on the Exorcist faction, since they sort of just appeared out of nowhere and said, "We're from the church. It's okay."
Yeah, because Erza showed up out of nowhere and was like, "I'm taking over as your consultant." I kept wondering what made her qualified and why Philia accepted Erza so quickly. I think I would have been a little apprehensive about someone randomly showing up with a demon in tow. I think we could have used just a little bit more time between Philia and Oswald to really solidify their relationship on screen. But they are really cute together. He's like a golden retriever, and his straightforward, hard-on-his-sleeve attitude is perfect for helping Philia not have misunderstandings and have more confidence. If you like non-isekai fantasies with strong female leads, then I believe the pros far outweigh the cons of Too Perfect Saint, and it is worth trying. This was an 8 out of 10. After watching Once Upon a Witch's Death, I walked away feeling disappointed.
There was potential for an interesting story and world building. I had been wanting a fantasy set in the modern time and wondering how that would feel, but this show just didn't quite get there.
Meg has absolutely no sense of urgency, and it really, really bothers me. I don't like when shows set such high stakes and then yada yada along afterwards. It ruins any tension that the conflict could have generated. Like, if it were me, I would have been stressing out so much to meet her quota of 3 tears of joy a day.
It doesn't help that the show doesn't even show us getting half of the tears.
The story starts with trying to solve people's problems and get the tears that way, but after a few episodes it switches to learning magic and meeting the other 7 sages. I feel like she could have just wedding crashed or gone to a birthing center to farm tears of joy.
Makes me wonder if they had an unspoken rule that she had to be the one to cause the tears of joy.
And then the show seemed to want her to work on them individually. I guess that's why episode 6 made her feel bad about not cherishing each tear that she'd already earned. And Meg is a bit of a lecher. It doesn't happen all the time, but just enough to be annoying. But she is very confident and hardworking when she puts her mind to it, and she pulls off some very impressive feats of magic.
The magic was by far the most redeeming part of this show, with the beautiful and impactful moments that they created with it.
Thinking especially about the fireworks show.
That's the one for you?
Yeah.
Not the cherry blossoms in the cemetery?
I think that one was too bittersweet, and it wasn't so much of like a marvel, but it was the first time that we ever saw her doing anything large scale. I also thought Eldora was the coolest character, but to my dismay, she wasn't there that much. And continuing with the silly names, the Wolfman was named Woof. Realistically, I should have dropped this after 6 episodes, but at that point I was too deep and I needed to know if she was going to suffer from her inaction, or if the story was going to come up with a loophole to the curse, or a large-scale way to earn tears. She did save an entire town from a tsunami, which did help with her tally.
I feel like those last few big events, the tsunami and tree spirit, she kind of stumbled into and got lucky with being in the right place at the right time rather than actually trying to gather tears.
But in the finale, she has less than 6 months left to live and decides to just go on a journey to find her birthplace instead. So it felt like the story deviated completely and there was absolutely no payoff.
This show had a lot of good spectacles, but Meg felt dragged along in her own life rather than fight to survive that the show could have been.
This was a 5 out of 10 for me.
Probably closer to a 6 for me.
I want to talk about Kowloon's generic romance in vague terms because I feel like any amount of story or character knowledge going in would ruin the overall enjoyment of the anime. This show is many things, but it boils down to a twisting, multi-layered mystery on the backdrop of a character piece.
Even the city feels like a character on its own at sometimes.
It's the kind of character drama where you find something to like about everyone because they are complex and flawed. They feel authentic, and they all play pivotal roles in the development of the story.
I would really like a character and think, maybe they are the best. And then we would get insight into another character's backstory and be like, oh no, they're really cool too.
Thematically, this show is about learning how to move on from things. It deals with a lot of heavy emotions and how different people process grief and remorse. But it's also about being true to yourself and not letting others influence your identity. The shock factor weird vibes toned down a little bit after the first few episodes for it to continue on mostly just mysterious weird vibes. But it never becomes scary or creepy, which I really appreciated. I felt very invested in building my hypothesis from episode 1, and if you're paying close attention, you can see many hints well before their reveals.
It really felt like you were along for the mystery with the main character.
I was astonished that we got as happy of an ending as we did, although if you look really carefully, you can see some cracks in the veneer of the final moments.
This show really did make you question everything.
Kowloon generic romance was incredible, and I gave it a 9 out of 10. With the Gorilla God's go-to girl, it was a little hard to forget that you were watching a low-budget show, but it was also still a cute, low-fantasy-style romance. I thought everyone's magical powers being tied to an animal god's blessing was interesting, and I liked seeing all the ways that they wove that into the world building and had the characters utilize those abilities. It's not an ultra-gripping, high-stakes anime, which is fine, because they don't all have to be. This was the kind of show where you'll find yourself smiling while watching it, but it did flub the second half a bit. For example, episodes 8 and 9 felt like filler episodes out of nowhere. My favorite character was Eddie because he's got that just needs a hug vibe, but he's also seemingly the most smart and capable of their trio and a little surly. The adorable cat hairpin that he gave Sophia at the Christmas party was such a cute way to reveal his animal blessing, too. But I'm here for the canon romance between Sophia and Louis. They're both so awkward in love, but they make a cute couple as they settle into their first romantic relationship. In a lot of ways, I feel like this show did not benefit from having the reverse harem elements and should have just focused more on developing their romance. And after Sophia and Louis finally get together, the show would throw things at you like, oh, they couldn't find time to hang out, or oh, it's been 3 weeks and we haven't spoken, but everything's fine. And it just felt kind of silly, like why would they put that artificial stop on the momentum? Ultimately, I don't regret watching it, but it did start to lose me in the second half, which left me feeling disappointed when I finished it. This was a 6 out of 10. The Brilliant Healer's new life in the shadows was missing that special something for me, but it also wasn't bad or boring enough not to finish.
The show kept you asking what will or could happen next.
Episode 1 drops you in with no explanation, with the harem already established, and with a surprising lack of screen time for the main character Zenos. It turns out this is because they decided to set episode 1 as a preview for further into the story, and then episode 2 resets you back to where everything started for him. This is a storytelling convention that I do not enjoy, and I feel like this show exemplifies it being done poorly.
It wasn't even a preview of a cool moment or anything. It was just the girls stealing their dinner. That felt like a totally skippable first episode. That would have made the reveals in the next episodes much better if we hadn't seen them already.
The story and the characters as individuals are missing depth, but the relationships between the characters is the strong point of the show over the storytelling. Zenos is another OP character that doesn't realize he's OP, this time because he trained outside the conventions of normal healer education. He's able to do feats of healing that nobody else can, but has never had the opportunity to benchmark himself. And while the other people in this world only have one type of magic, he can also use defense and support magic to an OP level. But his subtlety with all of those talents is what ended up causing drama with his previous party.
I understand how Zenos was from the slums and didn't have many opportunities to benchmark against other healers, but how had no one else in his party ever encountered normal healers to realize the difference?
It's possible they picked him up when they very first started adventuring, and so they never had another healer in the party, but it is still a stretch. Carmilla was my favorite character with how they have her pop in just to cause some mischief, and her character design in general was really cool. Her background of being like 300 years old and the strongest wraith in the world allowed her a certain level of intrigue that the other characters just didn't have. It also felt like she and Zenos had the most natural banter between each other. There's a bit more of a directed narrative in the second half once he goes to the Royal Hospital, and seeing him in an actual healer's environment instead of just his underground clinic was refreshing.
The second half also felt like it got sped up because it wasn't being dragged down by having the three leaders fighting each other and having to make their individual statements every time something happened.
While the story did technically conclude the Royal Hospital arc by the end of the season, it felt like it left our hooded antagonist shrouded in mystery. I have a theory that this is the other kid that was learning from Xenos' mentor. I just have a feeling that having a background in healing magic would make it easier for you to do the kinds of body modifications that we saw the guide be capable of. But as an anime-only consumer of the story, I'd have to wait for a second season, which I'm not really sure that they'd get, and I haven't seen any announcements about. So overall, this was a 6.5 out of 10. Season 2 of the Apothecary Diaries has a slower pace than Season 1, though it is no less interesting. And it's not to say that nothing is happening, because we're still shown really important things. It's just that viewers shouldn't expect to be solving mysteries every couple of episodes anymore. Where the pacing struggles most is in the second half of the season, because it's bogged down by having to keep up with characters in two different regions. Like, Yokio goes into labor in episode 17, and then no one talks about it again until episode 22.
From our split protagonist perspective, I think not mentioning this very big moment might be there to show that Jinshi has more important things going on than his job and potentially showing his transition out of his current position.
But this slower pace does not ruin or detract from the general high quality of the show and the characters. The major players this season are Shisui and Jinshi, who both go through major character arcs, and how everything is tied to the trauma the previous emperor left behind in the palace. There were so many deep and thought-provoking character moments that really remind you that Mao Mao's smarts aren't the only thing carrying the show.
It's really nice having a show where almost all the characters are important to the direction of the show.
The finale was very impactful. Not only did we see Mao Mao of all people cry, proving just how much her friends meant to her, but we were given a ton of information about the current state of affairs to adjust to. The last episode also had a lot of progress between Jinshi and Mao Mao, still mostly on his end, but she pretty much says that she does actually see him as a man.
And not just a frog.
She also looks at him with softer eyes nowadays, and true to her word, she doesn't treat him any differently now that she knows who he is. It'd be interesting to see how their relationship evolves now that he's openly approaching her.
We can see if fourth time is the charm.
A sequel's already been announced, thank God, and I'm really excited to find out what the future holds. Hopefully we'll only have to wait about a year like last time, because the Apothecary Diaries is a 10 out of 10, and I am obsessed.
It shows, because we watched this one weekly to avoid any big moments getting spoiled, and then binged the whole show before the last episode came out.
And then we watched the finale twice because I couldn't help myself. The Emerald Witch arc is one of my favorite parts of the Black Butler manga, and I was super happy for the anime adaptation. It introduced some compelling new characters while hinting at the very major direction the story is moving towards. CL takes somewhat of a backseat this season, which is fine because Sullivan is a character who brings a lot to the table. She is ultra smart and really cute, and she goes through quite the emotional journey that leads to a fun reveal towards the end of the season.
It was interesting to have the perspective of someone that's so immersed in the community that they're exploring as opposed to the school arc where the perspective was very much as an outsider.
And the relationship between Sullivan and Wolfram was really heartwarming.
I still don't really see how CL can have all this supernatural stuff going on around him and still question the existence of werewolves and witches.
Even though he was onto something in this case. CL working through his trauma also means that we get to see a bit more of Sebastian in action on his own. I'm glad that they leaned a little harder into the demon element this season because it's obviously one of the biggest draws of the story. So I enjoyed the bits and pieces that they showed us of his inhuman nature that were not just impossible combat moments, although fighting the tank was pretty fun too. I love the adorable danger noodles, and Snake talking for them is a comedic element that I do enjoy. And the cast of servants also got to take part in the fighting this season, reminding the viewer of their true purpose and abilities.
As someone who didn't watch the team form, it was nice to have them do something other than just to have a picnic this season.
A small complaint is that there were at least 25 minutes of recap filler combined across the season, so it didn't need to be 13 episodes. But they put a fancy border over top of it, making it easy to skip, so it's not really that big of a deal. From my completely biased love of this series, this season was a 10 out of 10. My Hero Academia Vigilantes fell a bit flat, no matter if you're considering it as a standalone or directly comparing it to the main My Hero story. But it still had a few positive aspects, so we'll start there first. Because it's a prequel to the main My Hero story, we get to see a lot of the fan-favorite heroes in action again in the background. Seeing more Eraserhead is always fun for me. It's also fun to see a new variety of quirks and explore a bit more of the world building. And I appreciated the villain's personal connection to Knuckle Duster.
I think Knuckle Duster's story was by far the most interesting that was presented, and I do wish the show was more from his perspective or leaned more into his conflict.
The show had lots of room for improvement on the characters themselves. I wish the main character, Koichi, had done some growing in this season. His quirk got some progression, which was fun, but he himself did not have character development.
His quirk got some progression, And then his mom just slapped that down again by mentioning that he was able to fly when he was a baby.
It felt like he was the same person in the end that he was in the beginning. Technically, the same could also be said for Popstep. The show didn't really start working on character backstories until the last 5 episodes or so, and even that was light.
It felt a bit aimless at the beginning, being a mostly Monster of the Week show and not very successfully establishing motivations.
It felt like they could have gone deeper and really made these characters into people that you were rooting for. I just think about how much care and craft went into the Todoroki family, for example, and then I look at this and I feel disappointed.
There can only be one emotionally gripping family per My Hero franchise.
And while I understand that it can be fairly difficult to use certain quirks to become a licensed hero, I think it was strange that Koichi never reapplied to take the exam because he has the most potential to go pro from their group. Because of those elements, it felt like there wasn't much motivation to keep watching from episode to episode, and I almost gave up halfway through. In the end, this show felt like a fairly average 6.5 out of 10. It's hard to put my finger on why, but I felt emotionally disconnected from the second season of Windbreaker.
This felt like a transition season, especially with the final episode.
Yeah, because the majority of these episodes felt like they were just a vehicle to set up things with these new scary guys, Endo and Takeshi. I appreciated the exploration of Sakura's loneliness and learning to rely on others, but it also felt like it was being done in a very in-your-face kind of way. My favorite part of the season was learning about Tsubaki and spending time with the old man. Those were very heartfelt story beats. The one-on-one fights still have interesting choreography and such, but the crowd fights felt a little bit too much.
While still visually good, it felt like they weren't able to keep the same continuity in the choreography when managing the group fights.
Like at the very beginning of the fight with Keel, the enemy gang closes them into a circle, but then as soon as Furin starts charging forward, there's no one behind them anymore. It made me miss the structure of the stage fights from last season.
So you're saying you missed the tournament arc?
You know something's wrong when I hark back for the days of a tournament arc. It just didn't have the same energy for me as season 1, so this was a 7 out of 10. From Old Country Bumpkin to Master Swordsman is the kind of show where there isn't really a conflict that carries across the whole season. And even though there was a decent amount of combat, it still has a slow life atmosphere to it as well.
It was a nice, mostly episodic show about a dude that knows way too many people that all want his help.
Still, I was able to find a couple of things to enjoy about it. The battle against the rats might have been my favorite part, although the episode when they went to wrangle the horse was absolutely ridiculous and out of nowhere.
He really can befriend anything. I was a little surprised when the rats didn't show up for dinner the next day, although they weren't treated quite as nicely.
The amount of selective hearing that these characters have is funny, and I swear Beryl has met everyone on the planet.
It really did seem like he cycled through a lot of students in his times teaching at the dojo.
Well, even the people that he didn't meet through the dojo, he met via working for the Order, like the king of all people. The CGI used for the fight scenes kind of makes it look like you're seeing a video game cutscene, which I think is slightly better quality than we normally get.
The CG took you out a little bit at first, but once the action picked up, it worked well enough.
This wasn't my type of show, so it was a 6 out of 10 for me because I was kind of bored. There was nothing truly wrong with it, though.
The show kept me entertained and never really had any episodes that were too boring, so I'd say more of a 7 out of 10.
The title, I left my A-rank party to help my students reach the dungeon depths, did not make it sound like Yuke left his party on bad terms. But the show does the classic having him forced out due to poor treatment. So I was a little bit thrown by the fact that his previous party ended up being the main antagonist for the first 8 episodes. I thought the magic was interesting, and a decent amount of the enemy designs were unique.
The crab was interesting, and the Shadow Stalkers felt really scary at first, and then when they learned better how to deal with them, it showed growth.
The show takes the time to explain things so that you understand their systems of magic and adventuring without totally bogging it down. And there was a cool parallel world theory to their dungeon system.
The dungeons really did get to feel like they were their own beings, and not just a setting, which was cool for a show to do. And exploring them as other worlds with their own problems gave them a lot of depth.
I didn't enjoy the streaming mascots element that they used to narrate, but luckily that didn't happen more than once or twice at the very beginning.
The streaming without the mascots was a cool aspect that I was really glad that they figured out how to actually weave into the narrative with having a way of the outside world monitoring the party going to unknown places.
If you truly hate harem shows, then this might bother you. But Yuke treats everyone well, and the group energy is friendly overall. But the harem flirtations kind of ramp up after he married Rain, which was the opposite of what I was expecting.
The marriage was in name only for plot reasons, but I also feel like their pairing felt the least forced.
Well, she didn't seem to take it as in name only implementation. But Jamie was my favorite girl because she's super cute and she actually went through a pretty decent character arc. The Glad Shiam arc had some intriguing aspects to add to the world building, but I didn't enjoy the conflict too much with the Twilight.
I really liked the exploration of that world, but I wish they had leaned a little more into everything being made of humans and how the culling of worlds worked.
Yeah, because it was like they figured out that that's what all the monsters and materials of the world were, and then it just didn't impact anything really after that. The final arc felt like we spent more time contemplating the logistics of travel than actually giving breathing room to the important things that happened at the gate, or giving us time to care about his uncle a little bit more first. But we did conclude the important parts of the story before the end of the season, which I appreciated.
It both left the show in a place where I'm happy with this show as a single season, but the to be continued at the end leaves me intrigued.
Now that they've accomplished their original goal, it would be interesting to see what new goals they would set to carry on the story. This was a 7 out of 10. This year, I got very into real-life backyard birding, and so I thought it might be fun to do some anime bird watching. Let's take a look at all these cute burbs of spring 2025 and do our best to guess what their real-life counterpart is. A trend I noticed across the season is that anime likes to put some white, nondescript bird in the first episode, or as a transition somewhere, which I thought was funny. It's like they think that white doves or albino pigeons exist everywhere or something. Let me know if you think there's a different kind of bird that this could be instead. The Brilliant Healer's New Life in the Shadows actually had the most birds of any show this season, but I think a lot of them were probably fictional species, especially when you try to look closer at the caged birds. The one that got the most screen time is probably a bluebird of some variety, but I couldn't find a perfect match. Then we have Shiro, who I feel is fairly identifiable as a snowy owl, this cute pair of European robins, and Lazarus had what looked like a gray heron and a lot of seagulls, including this not at all suspicious one. Then we saw a pair of Eurasian tree sparrows and a canary. We also got this really cool bird, which I think is a little bee eater, and I didn't know about these before, so they seem really cool. I think these might be ravens instead of crows. And as an honorable mention, I wanted to highlight Sussy the magpie from K-pop Demon Hunters because I thought he was absolutely adorable. I know it's not anime, and I know he's very stylized, but I don't care. Let me know in the comments what bird was your favorite, and if you're having fun, please like and subscribe. I've always loved horses, and while growing up on a ranch in the boonies doesn't make me an expert, it motivates me to talk about the good and bad representations of horses in anime. This video is meant more as good-natured fun than as any statement of fact, so let's review the horses that we saw during the spring 2025 anime season. There is a fairly even representation between 2D and CG horses, with each style having its own quirks. But a common struggle across both styles is showing natural horse movement, especially in the legs. But I'll be the first to admit how hard horses are to draw. Another common issue was the placement of saddles and riders on the saddles. The horses in the Unaware Atelier Meister were kind of chonky and overall pretty stiff and lacking in idle animations. With the Two Perfect Saint, it feels like the animators thought more about the flow of full body movement in comparison. They also have less blocky hair. The CG horse from the Brilliant Healer doesn't even have hair or eyes, but it is admittedly in the background. Their 2D horses were much better, even though they were just standing there. Rock is a Lady's Modesty had this cute portrait of a student with her horse. From Old Country Bumpkin to Master Swordsman's horses looked good from a distance when pulling a cart, but looked like statues up close. They also had the hysterical episode of him trying to catch a wild horse that you kind of need to suspend disbelief for. Sadly, I Left My Arrant Party gets the award for some of the worst horses of the season. The proportions are weird, the movement is stiff, especially in the legs, and these ones aren't even actually drinking the water. I think the show should have held back on using so many horse shots. Black Butler had some dopey-looking 2D horses, one of which was definitely on purpose for laughs. On the other hand, their CG horses were great and had idle animations which really brought them to life, such as the ear flicks. But one thing that led to many questions was this double-decker wagon. Like, how in the hell is the driver supposed to be controlling the horse on his left with the stairs in the way? And do those stairs even truly connect to the upper deck? Plus, he looks more like a passenger than a driver. Also, for a wagon that big, it would most likely be pulled by 4 horses instead. The Apothecary Diaries seems to copy-paste the same CG model repeatedly, but that's okay because it's one of the better models that we saw. The 2D horses are pretty good too, if not a little small in proportion. But let me know in the comments which horses were your favorite, and if you're having fun, please like and subscribe. Now that we finished watching all of the shows from spring 2025 that we intended to, we can do the tier list. And I feel like I say this every time, but I was going through a pretty major depressive episode at the second half of watching shows, so a lot of things ended up in dropped, and I'm sure that not all of them should be there in like a normal circumstance. Sure, I could have had more tolerance for finishing like Rock is a Lady's Modesty, for example, if I wasn't ultra depressed, but either way, there were still some good shows in here that broke through that. So starting with Moonrise, from what I do remember, it's more like just average. It needed a lot of work on storytelling, in my opinion, but it was still enjoyable.
Yeah, I can go an average for this season.
Then we had The Unaware Atelier Meister, which I enjoyed a lot more than I was expecting to. And I think, again, in comparison, it's probably an average.
It was a fun show, but it didn't really do anything groundbreaking.
Once Upon a Witch's Death was something that we watched at the very beginning of the season for us, and I probably should have dropped it ultimately and not pushed myself to keep watching it the whole time, but I still had the energy to push myself to keep watching, so that's a meh. I could have done without it.
Yeah, it didn't really live up to its promise and felt like it ended very flatly.
The Two Perfect Saint was really good. It had a lot going for it, but it wasn't like a new obsession level show, so I think it would be A tier.
Yeah, good show, didn't quite hit the best.
The Brilliant Healer's New Life in the Shadows was another one where it probably could have done a lot better if it had more story structure. Sometimes the sheer number of characters in the cast kind of brought it down, so I think it'd probably be B tier.
Yeah, a few too many times where everyone had to have their say in a conversation.
I didn't feel nearly as hyped about Windbreaker Season 2 as I did for the original season, but it's not like anything was terribly wrong. Like, you can't sit there and be like, oh, the animation quality went down or something. No, it's just personal opinion, so I think that was average this time.
Yeah, it didn't... Season 1 was much better than Season 2 was. It still had a few good emotional moments, and the fights were there for at least the solo fights.
Some of the group fights went way too long. Can a boy-girl relationship survive? Ended up being a C tier for me. Another one where I finished it and I was like, wow, I kind of wish I could have those hours of my life back because Himari is just intolerable.
Evil.
From Old Country Bumpkin to Master Swordsman for me is C tier because I was really bored, but again, there was nothing actually wrong with it, so it just wasn't holding my attention.
The sword fights were really cool, and it did a good job blending the CG and the 2D animation, so I'm gonna say screw you, and it's going in average.
Yeah,
because it doesn't deserve to be with those two.
No, it does not. If there was something between B and C, that's where it would be, really. The Gorilla Gods Go-To Girl, I think, had a lot of potential, but it really squandered its second half. So it's more like a B tier. But then it's also extremely low budget. So there's a lot of times where your brain is taken out of the show. I feel like if I were recommending it to people, which is technically what we're talking about, it's a C. But it wasn't like a C in the sense of like, oh, this was awful, I wish I'd dropped it. It was just that I felt disappointed. So I'd rather be nice to it and put it at B.
Okay. I gave up halfway through the season, but...
Kowloon Generic Romance was the breakout show of this season for me. I was not expecting for it to be that good, although I've heard a lot of really good things about the manga. I just wasn't sure if I could believe people. So this is our first best show of the season. It was wonderful.
Don't look into anything. Just watch.
Go in as blind as possible because it will make the experience better. I left my rank party to help my students reach the dungeon depths. It was good in the sense that it kept things moving and the energy of the show was fairly upbeat, so I would say it was an average.
Had some fun world building.
My Hero Academia Vigilantes was kind of disappointing to me. I really wish that they had spent more time on our trio of main characters because Knuckle Duster was really the only one that they spent time on, and that's why he ended up being the best character. And if they had done even a little bit more for everyone, it would have been so much more bearable.
Yeah, I feel like they could have done a better job making it more of a character piece than what it ended up being.
Because it was already so isolated from how the regular My Hero show works, where it's a huge cast. And so I thought we were going to go into more of an individualistic dive, and we didn't. I think the squandered potential earns it a B. The Apothecary Diaries Season 2 continues to be a really great show. I am absolutely obsessed. This is one of my, top 5 shows of all time, so it goes in best. And then my complete personal bias for Black Butler makes the Emerald Witch arc also in best of the best. And so, theoretically, it's like there were only 4 shows that I felt really good about this season, but there were a decent amount of good moments amongst the B-tier average shows that still made them worth watching. It always makes me feel bad when so many of my S-tier shows are literally just like sequel seasons to stuff, but you know, if you're that inundated in an IP, the likelihood that you're going to enjoy a follow-up is pretty high. So I'm just happy that at least one new show ended up in there.
Yeah, you're watching the follow-up seasons because you liked the first season. It makes sense that you're gonna enjoy it still.
Yeah. And now we have to look at how we originally thought that this tier list was going to go, because I don't think that our preview assumptions are going to be accurate because we did not weigh those scores for the depression scale. A lot of our meh shows ended up in dropped instead, so they didn't even pass the I'm wanting to give it a try test.
You didn't even pass the I don't even want to give it a try.
Oh, our Last Crusade, because I kept putting it off, and then finally it was like the only show left to watch, and I was like, I just can't do it. I can't get back into it. We thought we were going to drop Unaware Atelier Meister, and that's why I think it like blew my expectations away so much, because it was really cute.
Yeah, it looks like that or Two Perfect Saint were the biggest kind of winners in this tier list.
Okay, I swear though, the only reason why I thought Two Perfect Saint was even close to a C tier before was because the trailers show you absolutely nothing. It showed you like pretty animation, but then it didn't show you if there was going to be actual story or progression of anything. So they need to do better on their trailers.
And then in the opposite camp, Lazarus showed you basically the whole show in the trailer.
Ugh.
And then didn't do anything with it.
Yeah.
So that looks like our biggest loser of the season.
Well, technically the biggest loser of the season was Can a Boy-Girl Friendship Survive, because I wanted that to be good. Like, I'm totally fine with love triangles and all that drama, but I just,
Yeah, but it survived to not being dropped.
Yeah, but that was because I was sitting there saying to myself that I was committed to it. We didn't end up watching Witch Watch yet because it's flowing over, so we don't know.
Same with Fire Force.
I decided to drop Sword of the Demon Hunter off of my list because I saw that it had some questionable, violent things that I don't agree with, so I decided not to watch it, but you watched some of it.
Yeah, I've watched like the first 3 episodes, and it's actually pretty good so far. I can't say for how well it's going to go, but it's probably in B or A.
I think the conservative original assumption of Kowloon generic romance being a B. That was another one, though, where it was like the trailer was super confusing, but it makes sense now why it was confusing, so.
I wouldn't have want them to put much more in there.
No. As a final review tier list for the Spring 2025 anime season, I think that it was still a fairly high quality season, even if we ourselves didn't go through as many shows as we normally do. Let us know in the comments which show from Spring 2025 was your favorite and what you may or may not disagree with in our tier list. And if you're having fun, please like and subscribe. Welcome to the Spring 2025 Anime Awards, brought to you by Nerdindex. We compiled a list of categories, some standard, some silly, to highlight the memorable moments of the season. For our first category, we have the coolest weapon draw, and our winner is Moonrise. The way that their tech was so malleable and versatile was really cool.
It was really interesting to see how they could shape it to what they wanted at the time, and dashing with those capes looked like way too much fun.
Moving on to the best outfit of the season, which I felt was Philia's date episode dress in The Two Perfect Saint. It's something that I would definitely want to wear myself. And on the other end of the spectrum, we have the worst outfits of the season, which I thought were from Old Country Bumpkin to Master Swordsman. I still don't understand the thought process of making characters like Lysandra wear shorts that are not buttoned or zipped and thinking that they can still do combat in them, as well as the pseudo pants that Alicia was wearing that would also be no good for combat.
Gotta keep the air flowing, I guess.
For best songs of this season, we'll start with the opening of The Two Perfect Saint. The song itself was pretty, but the animation that they paired with it was beautiful as well.
An honorable mention could go to Kowloon Generic Romance.
The best ending theme song is from Black Butler, The Emerald Witch Arc. The song itself was great, but combined with the amazing visuals, it gave me goosebumps. And conversely, the worst song of the season was from My Hero Vigilantes with their opening theme song. Not that it was bad, but because it was a total earworm, I could not get the lyrics out of my head after I heard it. Funnily enough, our favorite mid-roll came from My Hero Vigilantes because it had the most dynamic motion and colors. It wasn't just a title card like normal. The cutest creature of this season would be Carbuncle from Once Upon a Witch's Death, because every scene that he was in was made better by his presence.
And I just want to tickle his tummy.
Moving on to the best fights of the season, which came from Black Butler, The Emerald Witch Arc. After the secret of the town was exposed, we got to see Wolfram go Super Soldier and Sebastian fight a tank, which were both really badass experiences.
They really did dial up the action once the mystery was solved.
The coolest magic use came from The Two Perfect Saint, particularly thinking of when Philia erected the barrier against the demons.
That shot from the trailer really was what got me interested in the show.
The cutest couple is Jinshi and Mao Mao from the Apothecary Diaries. It's basically the only slow burn romance that I enjoy, and they have a great dynamic together.
Probably because their interactions outside of the romance are always entertaining as well.
And finally, the best new show of the spring 2025 anime season was Kowloon Generic Romance. It blew me away with so many aspects that will keep you guessing and the characters that were amazingly crafted.
This show really was exceptional from start to finish, with a great story about finding your true self the whole way through. Let us know in the comments if you have any other categories you think we should include in future awards.
And if you're having fun, please like and subscribe. Let us know in the comments how you felt about this season as a whole, and if you're having fun, please like and subscribe.